Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Allana Harkin, a comedian and playwright you probably know best as a correspondent and producer on Frontal with Samantha Bee, where she's doing essential work pushing back against the insanity of contemporary American politics and culture. In fact, she's been so busy doing that we couldn't schedule the recording for months, and finally we had to do it when she came through Toronto during what turned out to be a 3-day rainstorm. So, again, sorry about the background noise. But it's worth it. Allana picked When Harry Met Sally, the 1989 romantic comedy that became an enduring touchstone of that genre, with Billy Crystal's self-destructive crank and Meg Ryan's challenging optimist arguing back and forth for years over whether men and women can be friends without complicating that friendship with sex. Directed by Rob Reiner at his commercial peak, and written by Nora Ephron as a sly riff on a very specific type of New York cinema, it's an immensely satisfying experience filled with charming dialogue, relatable characters, and wonderful, wonderful actors, and it hasn't lost a step in the 3 decades since its release. Seriously, it's one of the greats, and I'm really glad Allana picked it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I have loved this film for many, many years. I mean, I remember when it came out in the theater, and it hit me in so many different ways. I can't, and actually, I feel like I've seen it every 5 years since it was released in the 80s, and every time I see it, it's a film that still resonates. Yes, the pants are questionable. Yeah. The waistlines are quite high.
Tweed jackets on everybody.
Though a lot of that fashion is back in now.
That's true. Actually, that's true.
So, but it's one of those movies that is so character-based and is relationship-based, and it's just like, the subject matter is so simple, yet it's so complicated, and I've always loved it. I mean, I've always been drawn to comedies, and I'm a huge fan of Nora Ephron, always have been. And I met her a few years ago,
you were saying.
It's just one of those films I just can't get enough of. And now that I live in New York, it just resonates even more for me.
Are you doing the tour? Are you going to find places? Because almost none of it. I just watched it again 3 months ago, I guess. In the depths of winter, we had some friends over, and they just wanted to watch something warm.
Yes,
and
that warms your heart.
So much of it is it's almost a historical document. Almost 30 years later, most of those locations are gone.
Well, except for Central Park, sure. And that's the one that, I love. Listen, everyone who lives in New York and Nora Ephron was a New Yorker at heart and is in love with Central Park. And you can see in the film how much she loves New York and loves Central Park. So, it's a romantic film. It's exactly what you said, that, if I'm having a crappy day and I just want to, curl up in a blanket, I want to watch When Harry Met Sally. It's therapy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely therapy.
It's restorative that way. It's the sense that I'm kind of amazed at the way that it's changed over the years. Film is set in stone. The movie is always going to be exactly the same. And usually I'll watch a movie years later and find something different about it or find something new about it. What surprises me is now when I watch it, it is a better Woody Allen movie than most Woody Allen movies. And at the time it was sort of not for that it was just a derivative. It was Rob Reiner's Woody Allen movie.
Right.
And somehow it's outlasted so many others. And it's also weird because Billy Crystal's star has dimmed so considerably. Like, there was this tiny window where he was a convincing romantic comedy lead. It was basically this and maybe City Slickers, but not really, because that was about him leaving a relationship to go on with the guys. There was this tiny little window where he could get away with stuff like this. By the time Forget Paris came along, which is 5 years after this,
a film I also really love,
but people were already kind of soured on him being a romantic lead. Comic was fine, but you could see him struggling in a weird way with the Deborah Winger scenes with the bigger...
Well, his chemistry with Meg Ryan is just magical.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, and maybe this is the loyal Canadian in me, he won me over in 1989 and I've loved him ever since. I really do. Whenever he hosted the Oscars, you don't get romantic leads like that anymore. And what really struck me about this film is that Meg Ryan, it's not that she was sort of, supporting all of his jokes. She's hysterical in it.
Oh, no, she's
great. If you look at the credits, it's basically fourth credit down is Joe, who had one line. Like, it is really a two-hander, with, of course, the amazing support of Carrie Fisher and Bruno Kirby. Yeah. But it's like it's really an actor's dream to be in a film like that.
To just have, because all the dialogue is character dialogue. And that's the thing that Ephron could do that I don't know if that anyone else can do it quite the same way. Certainly no one else is doing it now. The idea that even the monologues that she insisted on including in everything she wrote, the essays, the complaints, the Larry David-ish stuff that he's doing now, when anyone else tried that, it felt, even Tarantino, it felt intrusive and digressive that these people are... I mean, it works in Pulp Fiction, it works in Reservoir Dogs, and that's the context where it works, because you can't be shooting people constantly, you need talking in the middle, and so monologues work. But in Ephron's scripts, the monologues serve the characters as well, because it's not just the complaint, it's who's doing the complaining, and the sort of... It's not aesthetic. The motivational split between speeches between Harry and Sally, the things that they complain about are specific to them,
right,
as well as specific to the movie.
But they're also so personal. Like, I can tell that this is, Nora Ephron, and this is why, gosh, I could really just talk about an hour about why I love this woman so much. She, like, I've read all of her books. She writes from a personal place. If you see Heartburn, or it's all, even the scenes in the movie where he's talking about divorce, or, she's talking about splitting up, that's from a personal place for her. Yeah. Like, it's not, those characters are speaking from her heart, and I hear that throughout the film. So, especially now, where I'm at now as an artist and someone who writes and someone who creates stuff, I see it from a different point of view now. I'm like, I hear her. I look for her in it. I'm, of course, engaged in the characters and engaged in their relationship with each other, but you could just tell that she was on a journey, and Rob Reiner and her just created something really magical together. I often wondered about her, though. Like, she's a great director, and she wrote this film, and then Rob Reiner directed, and I wondered, like, I wish I could know how much involvement she had in the direction of the film, and how much conversation they had, and how that felt for him to take something so personal and direct it.
Everybody had been doing that. I mean, that was the way it was for Ephron at the time. Who directed Heartburn 2 years earlier? Mike Nichols had taken it and made that. And it wouldn't be... Her first feature was... everybody thinks it's Sleepless in Seattle, but it's the other one. It's the earlier one with Julie Kavner, the name of which I never remember.
Well, you know what? It's Sleepless in Seattle is the one that people remember for her directing. And you kind of like...
It's because it was the hit.
It was the hit, but it was also one of those ones where it's kind of like, see guys? I can write and I can direct.
Yes. Yeah. And she did...
You can trust me.
And she did do that with the support of... both Ryan and Tom Hanks, who was already on his way to being the biggest movie star in the world.
Of course.
People clearly were willing to work with her as a director. There was no hesitation. This Is My Life? That was the first one.
Yes.
Which kind of has her worst instincts. It has the speeches, it has the idiosyncrasy, but she also tracks everything with music, and kind of there's all I really remember at this point of This Is My Life is the climax where there's this blaring Carly Simon song that kind of it yells over the important reunion dialogue between a mother and a daughter, but it's because Working Girl had just come out a couple of years before, and if you had a Carly Simon song, you used it.
Right.
So she stopped playing it safe when she made Sleepless in Seattle and let it be this really odd, funny comedy about a woman who is deeply unhappy, stalking a man who is deeply unhappy, and it goes deeper and darker than When Harry Met Sally, but I still come back to When Harry Met Sally because its concept is so perfect. The decade-spanning era kind of ignoring. I mean, you just get these little flashes. Like, Harry's a consultant and he doesn't like the people he's working with, so we assume it's the Reagan years, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, the years are it specifies when things are happening, and we still don't care. because it's really just about the conversation and how timeless that is. People will always be upset about politics. People will always be angry about restaurants. It doesn't really matter which decade.
Oh, it's an absolutely timeless movie.
Yeah.
I never watched that movie where I have not laughed out loud. Like, my husband laughs at me. He's like, I can't believe you're still laughing out loud at Baby Fish Mouth. Haven't you heard that joke a million times? But I'm like, baby, like, things, that scene.
Baby Fish Mouth is a perennial.
And I
it's about the frustration, right? Like, it's the frustration of watching people not connect at Pictionary. That's why Baby Fish Mouth is funny.
But also, that's something that, like, anytime I played Pictionary, even charades, through the years, I would yell out Baby Fish Mouth. Like, that, that resonated with me so deeply. And then when Bruno Kirby passed away, I was really upset. I was, it was a sad time, because he's so fabulous in the movie, and Carrie Fisher is wonderful, and all that the chemistry between the two of them juxtaposed against the chemistry between Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal is just one of those beautifully cast films that I really adore. Like, how many times have I taken notes on films before?
I think it's great. I love it when people show up prepared. I think it's just wonderful.
Yeah, I know.
It's well, but it deserves it. It's the kind of movie that I am constantly dismissing because it's a romantic comedy, and those are formulaic, and those
people do.
generic.
Oh, goodness.
But the reason that the genre is so formulaic is because everyone is emulating the good ones.
Right.
Because people think it'll be easy. I'll just make it like When Harry Met Sally, which means When Harry Met Sally is actually pretty good and worthy of exploration.
It's absolutely worthy. I mean, I'm sure people come in here and they, you interview them, and they come in with, like, just incredible films that, 5 people have heard of, and blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, you know what? I love this movie. I think it actually affected me as a young person in terms of, like, you know what? You should be friends with somebody before you get into a relationship. I'm not even kidding you. I feel like all of my relationships starting from high school were, I've got to be friends with them for a really, really long time. And I think I'm going to give Nora Ephron credit for that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You can sort of see how the movie feels about casual relationships through Harry and his kind of alienation and 20s liberal arts student dissatisfaction, which is just so magnificently sketched by the already 35-year-old Billy Crystal. But he sells it. He sells that fake world weariness, that affected thing that you do when you don't have an identity and you're trying to figure it out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's things, too, that now I look back on and I think, oh, gosh, that, that's, no one would say that now. But, maybe people think it of when Carrie Fisher and Meg Ryan are in the restaurant together. I think they're in Central Park, actually, because, like, I'm like, where are they? They're on the water.
It's that boathouse place.
It's the boathouse in Central Park. See, Nora Ephron loves Central Park.
She does.
It's like, really, if you want to go to New York, just watch When Harry Met Sally. And she says, you don't want to be that person who, finds out I'm paraphrasing, your husband is married to somebody else.
Right.
And it's really just about, getting the guy. But, like, even if, nowadays as feminists, as women, we don't want to admit to, like, I've got to be in a partnership to, people still want to love and people want to find that partner and they have that drive, So although it's, there's imperfections, of course, throughout, and there's some cliches, and there's one scene that I'm just like, oh, this is a really imperfect scene. I think it was when they're driving from Chicago to New York and they stop at the diner. And
that's right.
She says, I've had great sex before. And all of a sudden, like, the whole restaurant goes silent. There's no more music. And I'm like, oh, that's such a false moment.
Yeah, it's shticky.
It's so shticky.
It's shticky in that weird 80s kind of way, right? Where you'd have a record scratch, ironically, now if you did that. But, even the jukebox would stop playing. But it does set up the later deli scene in that Sally will not care if she gets attention, which is really interesting. Like, as a character quirk, it's sort of layering. It works to set that thing up, I've seen it theatrically 3 times, I think, over the years. We tried to screen it at Harbourfront, but we couldn't because of the language. But I saw it at another outdoor festival. I've been programming Harbourfront for a few years, and we couldn't get it because it's got, like, basically 14 8-course language is death because we have to be able to accommodate children walking by.
And all the F-bombs are from Meg Ryan's character.
I think Crystal has one. Like just
Does
one,
he?
like
But she's
like
got
a
most of them,
frustrated
which
one.
is really kind of funny because it seems like she wouldn't be the character who drops the F-bombs, but she is.
And he says he has that incredibly archaic, I went to bed with her dialogue, which makes me think, you're trying to do Woody Allen in that moment. Because, in Woody Allen's universe, even now, 25-year-olds use the phrase make love.
Yeah.
Because you just, you stopped.
Go to bed with her.
Yeah.
You went to bed with her? And then they repeat it to each other. Yeah. I'm like, nobody says that.
But I think, what I think works about it in the movie is that Ryan has just enough self-possession that she's throwing it back at him. Like she's not entertaining the phrase. She's making fun of him for saying it. And then he picks it up without thinking about it, unconsciously just saying, I went to bed with her. But it works because it shows you who these people are. Like, it's all about revealing character.
For sure. And that scene that you were talking about, like the callback scene, when they're at the diner and she has the, world famous fake orgasm. That is, I think, I'm guessing here, but I'm pretty close. It's like almost to the minute halfway through the film.
I think you're right.
It's like boom, right in the center. And it's so, it's from a structural point of view, at that moment, that's exactly when you need that from Meg Ryan. Because up to that point, you're like, who is this character? Gosh, she's so stuffy. She's so this, she's so that. Like, why are they still hanging out? Like, why is he standing next to a mailbox? Why she looks at every single piece of mail and then makes sure, it go, even though honestly, I am one of those people that put something in the mailbox. I'm like, did it go in?
Oh, I do that.
It's right back. And then the next scene after that orgasm scene is, it's the holidays, it's Christmas time, and they're getting a Christmas tree together. And it's, and then it's just like this real shift of kind of like, oh, who is this girl?
Yeah. I think it's the scene, it's the pivot from caricature to intimacy.
Yeah.
To like us understanding her as an intimate character. And that lets Ryan sell that big ludicrous crying sequence, which is great, but also it's a comedy scene. It's not a drama scene. Like the character's breaking down, but it's breaking down funny for us. And if you listen to what she's saying, it's really kind of horrible. I mean, she's unloading all that self-loathing and lacerating confessional stuff, but it's really funny because I don't think at that point Meg Ryan could do that without being funny, without being charming and human, because she's playing the reality of it plus like 20%, which is the again, it's a hacky comedic conceit, but it works here because they've constructed a world where, well, she's already faked an orgasm in public. Of course she's going to go big when she cries.
Right, of course. Yeah, she reminds me a lot of my 7-year-old. When my 7-year-old cries and you make one little joke and then she starts laughing, but she's still like just tears are pouring down her face.
Is it that hitching thing? Like that almost incomprehensible dialogue where you're trying to cry through feelings?
Exactly. I know. But it's such, you know what though, even though that scene is really big, it's, and it's great because then all of a sudden, they go to bed together.
Yeah.
And then he does that thing where he gets up and he leaves in the morning and, you're like, was that a mistake? Was that not? And then they're on a new path with their relationship. And I at every turn, it's just, it's just a really, really smart film. It's just kind of, and I have zero patience. Like, honestly, I get bored really, really quickly if something's not moving fast enough. Okay. But with this film, and maybe it's because it happened in the 90s and I have 80s and I have such nostalgia for it, but like even the scene with, they're on the phone with each other and she's like, what are you going to do tonight? And, everything, she won't admit to anything being wrong, and he's like, I think I'm just going to moan.
Oh, that's
I'll just moan. And then, there's like, I don't know how long it is, 35 seconds of him just going, like how that would immediately get cut in 2017, right?
Probably.
Like a movie exec would say, we can't have 35 seconds of a character just...
Or they'd throw in they'd throw in an insert, or there'd be something to break the visual monotony so the audience doesn't start shifting. You're right.
Yeah.
35 seconds.
But she just takes it she takes it a little bit far. And like, as a comedian, like, I appreciate that so much. I don't know if those... I don't know if films take that sort of risk anymore. There was a little bit of freedom in the 80s, you know, when ladies could be funny.
Sure.
And then we lost it in the 90s. Now we're back to it again.
Yeah, but only a few. Only a few are allowed to be funny.
Only a couple
right now.
people.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah. And Meg Ryan, they love Meg Ryan because her eyeballs were, you know, her eyes were so huge. God, she is so adorable in this film, though. Listen, it's really difficult to not fall in love with her.
No, she had that window. Window. The window is the wrong term because I think with Crystal there was a window where he could be marketable as a romantic lead. Ryan was like, I'm just thinking of the film she made back to back. Like I think it's DOA and Inner Space and one other one and then this, and they're all they're 20 degrees removed from a central Meg Ryan-ness, but they're all great variations on it. In DOA, she's sort of the ingenue who gets swept up in this big thing. In Inner Space, she's the girlfriend dressed like Madonna in Desperately Seeking Susan, also of Dennis Quaid, who gets swept up in this big adventure, but she is amazing in that role. The sort of 40s comic damsel thing she's got going on in this gigantic, complicated movie. And then this is just an adult person being a comic dynamo as well.
Yeah.
And that fact that she is all of these things. She's the dream girl. She's the unapproachable. Like, she plays every romantic comedy stereotype in one role, plus has a through line. And plus, I hate when I say plus. And has a through line that lets it all happen.
She has, and she carries the movie equally to Billy Crystal.
Oh yeah, she's probably more important than he is.
Yeah, and that's, you know, at that time, like that's saying a lot. You know, he's so, and he, you know, he's a very well-known comic. That's what he's done for his entire career, and she holds her own up against him, and I love her. I love her in this film. Yeah,
I mean, Harry is our point of view character, weirdly, but he is not the character who does the most changing or growing. It's just that whenever Sally does it, it's between, with the exception of the final scenes, she changes and grows between segments. So Harry's kind of a baseline, and Sally is bigger and smaller and less tolerant and more tolerant, and then she warms to him. But what the movie never states is that, yeah, she's doing all the work for both of those characters, because Harry improves for us because we see her warming to him as a person, not just as a friend. It's such a weird, tricky performance for her, because she's got to be every version of this character. And Crystal just kind of has to hold the line so she can... he's the... what's the term? He's the litmus. He's the stuff that you... No, wait, I'm getting this wrong. He's the thing that you dip in the litmus. He changes color based on what she's doing.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know. I see what you're trying to say.
Incredibly convoluted.
It's really complicated. Yeah. I'm like, wow, you really go deep with these movies.
I have to. This is all I can do.
This is your life. I mean, well, we should know, because this is a podcast. I should tell. Have you talked about this place before? That we're in
some photos floating around.
Yeah, we're in your studio, Norm, which has how many movies are here?
Oh, I don't know. I've lost track. Thousands, definitely. I mean,
absolutely. I've never been somewhere with more films.
Not since the Blockbusters closed down. No.
Oh, were you one of those people that went and bought half of them?
I had most of the stuff by then. I've been working in home video journalism since '88. So this is basically what happens. It just keeps coming. And now I just buy stuff.
Well, here's the thing, and this is what I do. The movies are so emotional. And when you contacted me, you said, is there any film that you want to talk about?
Oh, it took you like a minute.
It took me like a minute, but remember I said it's either Auntie-Mame.
That's right.
It's either When Harry Met Sally or Star Wars. Because those are the three movies that, like, I have an emotional response to, right. That kind of like, I'll even tear up still when I watch this movie. And I don't know necessarily if it's because of the narrative of the film, if it's because of the acting, or because it reminds me of something at some point in my life where I learned something. Where I either learned, okay, this is a woman who wrote this film, wow. And I distinctly remember that affecting me. Meg Ryan as like a lead character in this, who just like carried the comedy and was so fantastic. about like relationships and about friendships and about, and it's always stuck with me. And I feel like this movie has always kind of chased me a little bit. Like, I had mentioned to you that, this is where I'm going to start name dropping everybody. I've met a couple connections to this film now where, I met Nora Ephron, where I was like, my whole thing was, I'm like, just don't cry. Just, like, let's get a picture together and just, hang tight. Yeah. It was at the premiere of Love, Lost, and What I Wore in New York. She wrote a film with her, she wrote a play with her sister, and it was a stage reading that I went to see, and I went to the opening night party, which was bananas to go to and so I met her, and I have a picture with her that Daryl Roth took. Daryl Roth is an incredible female, even theater producer who I remember having this moment. One thing I'm really good at is being present in the moment that something is happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, right now, Daryl Roth is taking a picture with me and Nora Ephron. I am dying. And she said to me, and my friend Rosa was with me, and she said, oh, if you guys come back to New York, like, she gave us her home phone number. Oh. And I'm like, I knew you'd be the kind of person who would give me, I think it's crazy you just did because we just met, but of course you just gave it. And you know what? And she is the kind of person that you could just call up, and I'm like, thank the Lord you turned out to be this person, because I just idolize you. And recently I met Carl Reiner.
Oh, yes. God, yes. I remember you mentioning that you had at some point, and me just thinking, oh.
Carl Reiner, I have adored.
The 2,000-Year-Old Man box set is.
Oh, I'm sure it's a box set. Of course it is. Oh my gosh, you have VHS tapes in here too. Oh yeah. You have everything in here. Oh, yeah. But of course he's somebody else. Now? He's 94.
Okay.
And his wife, Estelle, is the woman is Rob Reiner's mom, who's in the scene.
In Katz's Deli.
Yeah, I'll have what she's having. And so I was directing him for a piece we were doing for Not the White House Correspondence Dinner for Full Frontal. And, he was basically, I was there to get jokes from him. Like I was shooting, which was George Shapiro is sitting next to me. I'm like, what is happening? But because I'm sitting in front of Carl Reiner, I'm just going to talk to him. I'm going to ask him some questions that, like, we're not going to use using on the show, but where am I going to ever have the opportunity? Yeah. So I said to him, okay, can you give us any advice at Full Frontal, like advice for comics? And I did say to him, what's the secret? You're 94. You're so prolific. You're still writing. Look at you. You're, he was, I can only hope that I will be like him at 94. And he said, the secret to life is you've got to find that one person that you love so deeply. He was married for 65 years to Estelle Reiner. Mm-hmm. And he went on to talk about her as, she was a jazz singer. And there was, honestly, I was looking over at my crew, there was not a dry eye in the place. And, and because, their son, Rob Reiner, directed When Harry Met Sally, of course, I'm like, this is all full circle. Right. Because you were raised by the most two amazing people in the world who are so in love with each other. 65 years of marriage. And of course you made this film. You have the best example of... And so, maybe I'm creating my own narrative around this film. But I love that I keep on, and then Carrie Fisher passed away this year, which was a shock and
just awful. Yeah, I mean, I think we watched When Harry Met Sally maybe a month after she died, and in the back of my mind, I was like, "Is this going to be okay? Are people going to be able to handle it?" And you forget. They're so alive. It sounds like a cliche because, of course, she's alive in the movie. She was alive when she made it, but there is so much. It's like listening to David Bowie's music. It won't let you mourn. There's just so much going on, and you can't be sad because it's right there. Mm-hmm. Like the energy is here and the life is there. And she and Kirby, they're both gone now, and it still doesn't matter. You can watch the film and not be sad because they were so good. This is why we love them in the first place.
And there's a great moment with the two of them after Harry's trying to set up Sally with Bruno Kirby's character, and then they realize that, you know, the other two like each other, and they leave the restaurant and they say, hey, you know, I don't know if you're interested in him, like, you know, and she's like, don't hurt Harry's feelings, like, this is all, you know, and then they immediately jump in the cab. Like, that to me is just, it's one of those, it's a laugh out loud moment. It's timed so perfectly. It's directed beautifully. Yeah. And, you know, it's those little small moments through this film that I love. They really touch me.
Well, how can you not? I mean, it's the kind of movie that invites you to embrace it, like to watch it closely and just settle in with the characters. It's a hangout movie before they had them.
Right.
Because now it's comfort food. You can just pull it out and hang out with these people that you already know and watch them find each other again and fall in love again and figure out who they are and all that stuff.
Who's making stuff like this now?
I think
is it too cliche to make these films now? Like,
I think it's our television.
Is romantic comedy getting a bad name? Because I love it.
I mean, as a genre, and this is something that fascinates me, it's a genre that has been beaten to death to the point where
doesn't mean everyone's done it well, though.
Oh God, no, it's been strip mined. Like, everybody has taken the parts that kind of work in their minds and put it into their own. Like, you slap things on it, you reconfigure it. I mean, you look at what Richard Curtis did just by himself, starting with Four Weddings and a Funeral, which actually is the best use, I think, of the When Harry Met Sally structure, where you're getting vignettes that actually add up to something bigger.
Actually, that is another film that I need to come back and talk about because, oh my gosh, even though it does have the worst piece of acting ever in it,
right near the end. I hadn't noticed that one.
Yes, it's the word. I'm just like, oh, how did that even happen? Why?
I think it's supposed to be.
Is it raining? I didn't even notice.
I know. Andy McDowell is such an interesting performer because when she's alive, she's fully alive. When she Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Groundhog Day, even Magic Mike 2, when she shows up in that, she's great for 5 minutes, and you just get the sense that there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And then other times, it's really clear that she hasn't been directed, and she just doesn't. She's kind of reaching,
right? And
there are like half of Four Weddings and a Funeral feel like Mike Newell just didn't have enough time with her, and she's kind of ill at ease at being the American in this big British cast, and maybe whatever happened just needed to happen a little bit longer.
And Four Weddings and a Funeral is another one of those films where you're just like, oh God, I just need a blanket. I need Four Weddings and a Funeral, and I just need to. It's movie therapy.
Yeah,
those are. Maybe I just need to go. Maybe I just need to go to therapy. I've saved myself a lot of money by just having films I like to watch.
I'm gonna say, I think
over and over again.
This. I think you're doing it now. Like, my therapy is Jaws and Die Hard probably, and maybe Lawrence of Arabia if I have time. Those are the things that I find myself returning to most often, just because they make me happy, and part of that is because they reconnect me with the person I was when I first saw them.
Right.
And everything falls away when you're really immersed in a movie. You can just forget about whatever else is going on. On the other hand, they're just great cinema, and the good stuff lasts for a reason. Movies endure because we come back to them, not because they're on a shelf somewhere untouched for 30 or 40 or 60 years. You want to watch them, you want to re-engage with them again, and there's a million different reasons why that's better than sitting and talking about your problems for an hour to somebody who has a notepad, I think.
Yeah, well, then again, I love chit-chatting. I just don't like paying somebody $100 an hour.
Sorry, and my impulse is to go all around, Reiner, 100? Where are you getting 100 therapy in New York? It's true. It's better to talk stuff out with people who are talking back, I find. The concept of therapy where someone says, what does that make you feel? I can do that myself.
Right.
What do I need?
Hey, no, I'm not knocking therapy though.
I am. What
all you people out there, it's we all need therapy now that a certain someone is president of the United States.
I've been trying to figure out how to get the phrase "president company" accepted into conversation, where you can just sort of cut through that as a shorthand and just whatever. We know everything sucks.
Right.
Let's just have dinner.
Yeah, but you know what? This is a time that, although my work right now on Full Frontal is just so intense that, I do look for these moments of, when I watch something like When Harry Met Sally or Grace and Frankie or Frankie and Grace and
Grace and Frankie.
Yeah, with Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda. It's so simple. It's like really, you know, I know it's the buddy film, but or the buddy television show, but it's like it's a romantic comedy between two women, and you know that's the thing with Bridesmaids too. And I always gravitate towards those sorts of films. You know, like
So is it about escapism or is it about empowering escapism, where the type of escapism for you is also something you need, like the subject matter or the execution is something that you are also responding to?
It's just something I like to identify. Like I have I have amazing girlfriends and my relationships are really, really deep with all of my friends that I have. And I like watching films that have those really true moments in it, you know? Yeah. But like when I saw Star Wars for the first time, I was really emotionally overwhelmed by Star Wars. And that is a film that I could, you know, I can watch over and over and over again. I can only watch 4, 5, and 6, but you know, I can't watch it. But I do every time I watch it. I'm just like, you know, my husband's always laughing at me. He's like, "You're the only person I know who cries watching these films." I'm like, "I love Obi-Wan."
You're supposed to be
it's
involved.
just
They're
I mean, it's and. Yeah, I mean, there's just a way, you know, these sort of relationships and these sort of, you know, that you can identify in your own life. And and I guess it is an escape.
Yeah.
I'm all good with that, especially now.
Well, I'm kind of amazed at how everybody is so excited about a Handmaid's Tale television show right at a point where we're kind of already soaking in it. I don't know that...
Well, you know what's crazy about that is that I just can't... I'm not sure what you know, what newspaper, wherever this is from, but they're using the phrase, like it's timely.
Right.
Like, that's not something to be proud of.
Yeah.
This is terrifying that this is timely, you know? Yeah. We should all be quite fearful that we're calling this... God, there's no better time for The Handmaid's Tale than now, because we might be living it.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that in a cautionary way, or you could say that on the Republican side, like there's no better time for The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah,
it's
ladies look great in bonnets. What's your problem? Get a bonnet. You look great in red.
I found the book.
Wear red more.
I found the book when we were unpacking, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is 30 years old, and it's like still pretty fresh. I haven't watched the new show yet because
I haven't either.
I'm clenched. I don't
I haven't. You know what? Isn't that funny? I have not either because I can't, I'm just, you know, I feel like my work hours are just entrenched in this. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to go home at night and just be more fearful of the future. But I do really want to see it. I love Margaret Atwood and, you know, fellow Canadian. I gotta support.
Sure. Shot here in Toronto.
There's so many Toronto actors though that are in The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah,
like it's, I want to tune into it because honestly, I know like through, you know, people are constantly posting, "Hey, I'm in this episode coming up," and I want to see it. Just so I want to see all my like fellow Toronto actors.
Yeah, Christian Brune has a voice role apparently. He plays a doctor who you don't see.
Oh, in
the 3rd episode, I think he just tweeted about it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know he was in that. Cool, I will watch that.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, and I mean, I like Elizabeth Moss, and I the whole package is maybe Joseph Fiennes, but the whole package is interesting to me, and I would like to watch it, but I just, you know, we just saw the healthcare bill pass yesterday. We know where we're going. Or not pass, but it passed the House.
It makes you want to wrap yourself in a blanket and watch 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Yeah. Or When Harry Met Sally, which even though it's set during the Reagan years, America was sane then. Like, and it's a film made in the shadow of the Cold War with none of that. I guess it's on the outswing. It's sort of the worst was already over. The glasnost had started when they made the movie. But this is what I meant earlier about how it takes no political temperature. There's really no sense of it. And
not
that
at all.
Also serves the feeling of a relationship where the world kind of falls away because you're just in this thing. You're in this little bubble.
I am distracted by everyone's apartment, though. I'm like...
Oh, that scene where they roll the carpet out.
Yeah, I'm like, first of all, that is the biggest New York apartment. I mean, if you could get that kind of apartment in 1989, I want to, you know, my gosh.
I'm just assuming they're all warehouse sets.
Yeah, everyone lives like that in New York, in that gigantic, or Bruno Kirby's...
The brownstone.
The brownstone, like the most beautiful brownstone that you've ever seen. That's just massive. But it's sort of like, you know, the Nancy Meyers kitchens, right? Like, you've got to have the beautiful setting, you're not going to have the crappy apartment.
Yeah, it's a it's an escapist fantasy of an escapist fantasy.
Right.
Or the rent-controlled apartment and Friends, all of it. You know, like if you analyze this for 5 minutes, there's no way that this thing
Meg Ryan does have a realistic New York apartment, though.
Is that the one with the beams? Does she have columns or exposed? Somebody has.
I just last time I saw it, I just recognized like, yep, that's a tiny New York kitchen that a family of 6 would be using.
Yeah. We had a place. When Kate was there for her contract in 2007, we had a place on West 73rd, a little tiny brownstone walk-up thing. Just one apartment.
Like 73rd and Broadway or near closer to the park?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Amsterdam and Columbus. Oh, yeah.
That's a great area.
It was wonderful.
The Upper West Side is fabulous.
Yeah, if and when that's where we would go. Or maybe Tribeca, just because you can get a really high apartment, and then when the city floods, you can still be okay.
Well, if you want to live in Tribeca, you're going to have to get a job in finance. Yeah. So good luck with that.
I know. I would be...
You're going to have to sell all of your films to move to Tribeca.
I know. I just assume that the only way to do it now is to be like the live-in cinema consultant for somebody who can afford that. And then, you know...
I love your dreams.
I will be in the room awaiting Sir's decisions.
Wow.
And then just go off and live my life. Yeah. No, it's... Oh, I love New York. It's the great missed opportunity of our lives. We should have stayed. And had we stayed, Kate's job would have ended about a year later when her office is downsized, and I would have starved because film critics' jobs all went away 6 months later. But yeah, it's
so it's not the missed opportunity. It sounds like you dodged a bullet.
We dodged a bullet, yeah, which is weird. But it's one of those things where we would give all of this away.
It's amazing. You know what? And this is, and I love watching movies and shows that feature New York as the the fifth character, basically, because it is a magical city. It really, really is. It's when you walk through Central Park, there's something in the air. There really is. Mm-hmm. There's something pretty incredible about New York. Everyone keeps on saying to me, Allana, you just moved to the U.S. What a time to move to the U.S. Are you going to come? When are you coming back? There's people who live in New York are so passionate. And I've never understood when people have said that New Yorkers aren't nice or they ignore you. I find the complete opposite. You get on a New York subway, a woman walks on who's pregnant, 10 people will get up to let that woman sit down.
Yeah.
New Yorkers are incredible people. They're lovely. I feel like I've watched even more films that feature New York as a character since I moved there.
Yeah,
I love it.
I definitely noticed that after I was there for a bit. You just come back and think, oh, that's my New York. That part of the Noah Baumbach's movies, not Woody Allen's movies. Those are films about people who live in apartments, and Baumbach's movies, and When Harry Met Sally, and a bunch of other films made around that time. They're taking advantage of going outside. That's the New York you want to see. You want to see that it's not a hermetic society. And New Yorkers, they're impatient, but they're not mean. You have to make sure you're not in anybody's way. And
they're passionate.
Yeah,
they're passionate. As a descendant of Irish people, I appreciate that.
Okay, my greatest moment was as a non-New Yorker, as an almost New Yorker. My greatest moment was having someone ask me at the foot of Central Park how to get to Central Park.
Oh,
because you go through the whole thing. You go through the responses. Are you kidding me?
It's right there.
Yeah, and you want to go, what? Are you looking to turn your head? You'll see it. Because everybody else is talking like that. And you go, oh no, the entrance is right over there.
Do you see where all the trees are? That's where it is.
Yes.
And then you won't see trees for a while if you start walking south.
Yeah. You may not have a dearth of green where you come from, but here all the green is in this one location. Enjoy, please.
I would love to figure out, gosh, it's so funny now that we're talking about this. I'm like, God, there's so much I don't know about When Harry Met Sally, like the way that she shot it. I mean, the scenes of, New York in the winter and the scene where they're walking through the park, which is the cover of,
fall.
It's the most beautiful, perfect fall day in New York, and you could just imagine Rob Reiner just getting so excited that this is, and of course the DP getting so excited that this is what the backdrop is going to look like for the shot.
Yeah, well, I think if you're making a movie that spans years, you have to account for everything, right? You have to build in the shooting schedule for that breadth of time. Although maybe if you're clever, you can do it in 6 weeks. I just don't know, right? Because Ryan was working so much, she couldn't have been available for a long shoot. They must have just done it in from October to January, maybe, and fake summer.
I guess.
Because you could fake it. You could get
of course.
most of it, right?
Oh, well, this is what we do. We fake it in the film and television industry, sadly.
Yeah. Nothing is real. Well, and when you were saying, like, all the ideas that New York gets a bad rap, I was thinking, well, it's probably because most people experience the media version of New York, which was made in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So they wouldn't even, even Friends was shot in L.A. You wouldn't even understand what the real city is like unless you're there all the time. And then you've got shows that do shoot in New York, like Law and Order, which just tell you that everything is murder all the time anyway.
Right.
And murder and sassy people.
Well, yeah, and Sex in the City.
Right.
There's always a Sex in the City tour happening in New York.
Yes.
And that's a show that where absolutely there's a love affair with New York.
Mm-hmm. And it builds on some of the stuff. It definitely builds on the location hunger that When Harry Met Sally uses, in a different way, but in a similar way as, I don't know how to explain it. What happens in When Harry Met Sally, where they're fetishizing restaurants, like specific locations and specific things, where you're using the city's highlights to tell your story, also happened, like that was the purpose of Sex in the City. The city is a character because we visit these 4 businesses every year.
Right.
And it felt, towards the end, and I guess that's the advantage of When Harry Met Sally being 90-odd minutes long and Sex and the City running for a decade. Mm-hmm. You get tired of, you fall into formula and you start relying on things, and this is the cupcake store that we're going to boost this year.
Right.
When Harry Met Sally is not really concerned with people go to Katz's Deli. That was a happy accident that people still talk about.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there was... Did they even say Katz's Deli?
No.
Like, can you tell it's Katz's Deli?
You can tell, yeah. I mean, the stuff on the wall is a giveaway.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah, it doesn't make a point of it. It's a deli where they are.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a landmark because people love the movie, not because the movie is trying really hard for product placement.
Is Katz's... this is a stupid question to ask. Is it still open?
Oh, yeah.
It's still open. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I'm like, I should go there. Well, people go there. I think
they go there for it, yeah.
Yeah, and I read this somewhere that people go in and they do the whole orgasm scene, and people who work there are like, shut up.
Yeah, I've been there on 2 separate occasions in 15 years' time where people have asked which table it was. I've actually seen tourists do it.
Really?
Yeah.
And see, I never do that. I've never. This is why I ask. Is it still there? Because I'm not really interested in going to see where's Carrie's apartment, and I've never. I'm totally okay to just sort of disappear into the narrative and know that this is New York, but I don't want to ever kind of see the place and see someone else walk out the front door. Like, yeah, I'm not really. I don't want to burst the bubble.
Yeah, no, it's also specific in time, right? Like, it's fixed. You could never go there and be that and do that because it's already happened. That said, that there's a line in the last 5 years about a couple getting a little apartment on West 73rd, which is exactly where Kate's place was, and I'm just like, aww. And then I talked to Richard LaGrevenes about it and was dumb enough to say, and I had an appeal.
Feels like you need to move back to New York.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? That's every day of my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
We have black and white cookies in the goddamn freezer.
You do?
Yes, we do.
I feel like I should have brought you something from New York.
We're going back soon.
I should have at least brought you a full Frontal t-shirt. Gosh, that's terrible of me.
We would rather... You know what? The money all goes to good stuff. We'll buy them when we get there.
It does make me laugh that we're talking about New York in Toronto when I live there now.
Yeah.
And we're here.
This is the boomerang effect.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I was going to ask you the same. Is there something we haven't covered? Is there a point you want to make?
Let me see if there's anything that I... Well, the other thing, I think, I love the conversations. I've always... Whenever I go to a party... If there's a couple senior citizens somewhere at the party, I always gravitate towards the senior citizens in the room because for sure they always have the best stories. Okay. And that's always something my friends always make. It's not something, it just happens. I have lots of friends who are, in their 70s, and I have a really good friend who's 85 that I've just always like, tell me, asking him for advice. Of course, he'd have so much advice for me. But so in the film, all the couples that are being interviewed.
Oh, the interstitial stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a device we didn't talk about and is brilliant.
It's such a brilliant device. It's so simple. It's, I could only imagine when Nora Ephron was writing the film, or if it's something that her and Rob Reiner, maybe that device wasn't even in the script originally, and that's something they discussed together, because, like, what a button to have on the whole film, to have Meg Ryan's character and Billy Crystal have their moment. But I learned years later, of course, because I'm just so invested in a film when I'm watching it. I thought that they were real couples. But what I found out is that Rob Reiner had interviewed all of these real couples, but I thought they were great.
Yeah.
Weren't they so good?
It's believable because they're not familiar, and so you don't recognize them and you buy it.
And he wrote down exactly their dialogue, and that was the exact dialogue, and then he used actors in the moment.
Mm-hmm. But sorry, you were saying about senior citizens gravitating to them at parties.
Yeah, so that moment I was just like, it's so because that's what you want through the film. You want, it's kind of like, this is how we got together, and we've been married for this many years, and my parents have been married for over 50 years. My husband's parents have been married for over 50 years.
Wow.
Like, yeah, I guess, God, I'm really just a lover, not a fighter, even though I work on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee.
Maybe you pick your battles?
I have so much love in my heart, yet I work on a show where I'm, fighting a monster. Yeah. So, no, I love that device to the film. I think it's a really smart move, and it's a beautiful little thing that's just kind of dropped in throughout the film, and the way it's all timed and rhythmically, it just works really well.
Yeah, and it pays off because even though you've been watching these segments, you don't expect to see Harry and Sally at the end. I mean, I certainly didn't. I remember there were a couple of gasps at my screening when I saw it with an audience the first time because, oh, like that. Like it bounced in the room. You could feel people responding to it. And even now, when it comes up, you still forget the payoff because you're not invested in that. You're invested in watching it happen instead of a calm, wistful reflection.
Totally. And you know what I would say to people right now is sort of like, if your heart is just heavy from what's happening in the world, just get a blanket, curl up, and watch When Harry Met Sally. And at least for that brief moment in time, it's a really great romantic comedy. And of course, as we talked about, not all of them are. Your heart will just be healed for like just a certain amount of time.
Yeah, it's a good place to hide for 95 minutes.
It's a great place to hide for 95 minutes. And then you can get back to the real world and look at your Twitter and find out, the new thing that he's, oh gosh.
We've been away from our phones for an hour and a quarter and I'm worried now.
Well, that's the thing that Sam and I are always talking about. You're like, if we go into a meeting or, if I turn off my phone and, or if it's the evening and I'm fully engaging with my children and not on the phone. And I turn back and I'm like, I cannot believe what happens when you put down your phone nowadays.
Yeah. It's like the world is having seizures.
And this is another thing. When Harry Met Sally, there was no cell phones.
No, there's nothing.
Yeah.
They're journalists who write on
this is when you can engage with each other because you weren't checking your phone. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's a good way to live. Still, even now. Better.
I can't live that way, can you?
I get itchy. I do. I'm used to it, and I like connection, but it also, we're experiencing the downside of that like we've never experienced it before. Like, not only is a television star president largely because of the speed with which a lie can travel. The old say, right? A lie can get halfway around the world before the truth can put its pants on, which is magnificently Yiddish in that perfect way. But you're watching the proliferation of that now. I don't have to tell you that's how it works. Like, you cannot combat, even if, people think that Obamacare has already been repealed, even though it's just right now, it's a bill that's been passed in the House. It's probably going to die in the Senate. They've already announced that they're...
so.
Me too. But they've already announced that they're changing the bill. Like, it won't be the same bill that goes through the Senate, which means that next year, when the Republicans are running against people who think they've taken away their health care, they can say, oh, no, well, we tried our best, but we didn't succeed because of those rotten Democrats who... Like, it's all lies.
It's all lies.
But we're steeped in it, and there's no escaping it. So... it's exhausting to look at your phone, even though I open Instagram to look at dog pictures, because that's all I use Instagram for. That's my escape. I've sectioned off my social media presence. But we're living in a world where nothing matters, right? Because it won't last for 8 hours. There'll be another thing. There'll be another exhausting scandal or an angry tweet or a fire festival or something to distract. It's a constant spinning distraction. It's like holding on to a top that won't stop.
That's why you have to fall in love, Norm.
I did that.
Gotta fall in love. Well, you are in love.
We're okay.
And that's the thing.
We're good.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, that's a general. The general out there, everyone's listening. You take that advice from Carl Reiner, you find that one person, who you can be with for 65 years, who after, no matter what happens during the day, I get to go home to, like, the love of my life.
Nice.
So maybe romantic comedy isn't that bad.
No. It's the individual ones that are
there are great ones.
What do you hate? What romantic? Well, okay. How about this? I'll ask you an opposite question. What would be one of your favorites?
Favorite romantic comedies?
Yeah. Do you have any?
Yeah, Annie Hall. Problematic as Woody Allen has become, that film is just perfect. I really like When Harry Met Sally. I really like Four Weddings and a Funeral. Big fan of About a Boy, which isn't really a romantic comedy.
I loved it.
But is a great piece of what it is.
Yeah.
There's another one that I always forget. Enough Said, the Nicole Holofcener film, which is now instantly became hard to watch because James Gandolfini died before it was released, but is great. If you can come back to it now and watch it clean, it's a lovely little example of the form.
Oh my God, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is so good in it. She's fabulous. That was a surprise actually. I think I saw that on a plane.
I think everybody did.
Yeah, okay. I saw that on a plane.
It played at TIFF. It ran for about a week everywhere theatrically because it was in Indy at the point where no one was going to see them at all. And it's got this second life as a movie that people are discovering now and really love. And
I like seeing characters in that light. You know what I mean? I like seeing them do different things and sort of I feel like this is a good time of life to sort of start writing down 10 films you want to watch.
Yeah.
Especially
making a list of your therapy movies.
Well, your therapy movie, and it's pouring rain outside. It's like a perfect time to watch a movie.
Yeah, I hope people can't hear it. Well, the last question on the podcast is also always the same, so we'll get to that, which is, and this is one I've been interested in the answer to more than most. What, if anything, of When Harry Met Sally have you referenced or borrowed or stolen, or what has any of it found its way into your creative DNA?
100%.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, as I told you, I've honestly said the phrase baby fish mouth at least 300 times. No doubt. I've absolutely.
So you've actively appropriated that for your own.
Oh, for sure. As a person, no, but I wrote a romantic comedy. I wrote a play called Real Estate, which is very much, it's about two characters. I actually, to be honest with you, have not even thought about that there could be a DNA connection with When Harry Met Sally, but it is two people who, it's not something, it's not really until the end of the play where they're like, oh, should we go on a date? You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that, people say, romantic comedy, it's not going to cure brain cancer. Well, no film is going to cure brain cancer, frankly, but...
it'd be great if it could.
Yeah, I love, absolutely the sort of slice of life relationships, whether it's with two women, a man and a woman, whatever. I feel like they're really important. I feel like I feel like we grow as people. I think absolutely this film, because of Nora Ephron, because of the relationship of Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal, because of, Meg Ryan's how strong she is in this role. I feel like all of that had a major effect on me and what I like and what I write. And I don't know if it really it didn't start me off on becoming a comedian, but definitely the 80s of all the comic films that I just completely absorbed myself in really changed who I am, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. And do you feel that you have transcended your Salliness or incorporated it? If that's a character or a personality type that you've sort of imprinted on or related to, if it shaped you, where are you now in her arc?
Oh, well, I don't think it's necessarily her, but more the two of them together. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if the character specifically had an effect. More the person who had the most effect on me, hands down, was Nora Ephron. No doubt. I do distinctly remember finding out who wrote the movie and finding out it was her. And even at the time, it didn't strike me that she was a woman because I wasn't raised to believe that would be the craziest thing in the world. Okay. It wasn't until later on that I went, hold on one second, and especially now as somebody who writes and creates and, who directs, I see what she must have gone through to get this made. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe it was a time of life where it was, she found a great partnership in Rob Reiner, and
she was pretty in demand throughout the 80s as a screenwriter. I mean, she wrote Silkwood, which everybody forgets.
Oh my gosh, I love Silkwood.
This great, weird character piece that's also an awful, painful thriller.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that, like, it just always reminds, at this stage in my life, I guess I was never somebody who was, like, ashamed to admit what I liked. But some people have told me, oh, I hate When Harry Met Sally. I'm like, do you? Really? Do you really? How can you hate When Harry Met Sally? You're just saying that because it's a romantic comedy? I think it's a perfect romantic comedy. I think it's like, if you're somebody who wants to write a romantic comedy, I think it's a great example of, like, something that works and chemistry between people that works. And I got to tell you, I would watch it in a heartbeat again, and I think I just saw it like 2 weeks ago. So that says a lot.
I'm probably going to revisit it real soon.
Yeah.
I just saw it in January, but yeah, I could easily.
See?
Well, it's comforting. And yeah, you're right. It's only been, 4 months, and I could use more comforting.
And it's almost, I didn't even think about the fact that it's like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
30 years ago.
Yeah. It's, if you stop to think, I mean, as somebody who came up in the 80s, if you stop to think about everything that's having a 30th anniversary in the next couple of years, you'll lose your mind. It's like RoboCop and
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing was last year, I think? No, this year.
Is that 30 years? I don't know. It's all that. Wow.
Yeah, we're all very old.
Gosh. Well, I was 2 when I saw When Harry Met Sally.
Okay.
So and it really affected me deeply.
Clearly.
It got into my DNA.
My thanks to Allana Harkin, who you can see Wednesdays at 10:30 p.m. on TBS in the US and the Comedy Network in Canada on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. And if you don't see her on the show, she's behind the scenes doing stuff. And if you miss the show on the night, you can find it the next day on samanthab.com. You can find Allana on Twitter at Allana Harkin, all one word, 2 L's, 1 N. Well, 2 N's, but not together. And you can find When Harry Met Sally on Blu-ray and DVD from MGM Home Entertainment. The special edition comes with a really terrific commentary track by Ephron, Reiner, and Crystal. Don't miss that. It's also available on iTunes and Google Play. And as always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. If you want to leave a review on iTunes, that would be very kind of you. I'll have what you're having. Thanks for listening.